Okay, finally going live on YouTube. That took way longer than it should have. Sorry about that. Talk about sorry. Talk about proteins and fats for weight loss, percentage grams wise, please. So it does change. It doesn't. It's not the same sort of grammage for everybody. Okay, so uh, you just need to get enough protein. You need to get enough fat. Your body will tell you that. If you're not eating carbohydrates, you're not eating a lot of other, lectins and things like that are going to disrupt your hunger signals, that are going to disrupt your digestion and your energy absorption or nutrient absorption. You can generally just listen to your body. So you eat enough. You keep going while meat tastes good and is satisfying to you, and then it'll stop being as satisfying, and you'll just stop. And so you can just listen to your body. You can eat intuitively if you're eating a natural diet. So I would just do that, but you need to make sure you get enough. People are trying to limit all the things that they're eating especially in order to lose weight. Um, but that's not what your body's asking for. Your body's asking for nutrients. If you're giving it the right nutrients, it won't let you overeat. Generally, there are people that have different sort of conditions and are on different medications that may change that and alter that. But that is it. That is a general rule. So I would just eat enough protein and enough fat. That's going to be different for everybody. Okay, so I'm going to start with some questions here. Um, that we had submitted from my Patreon group. And if you want to be a member of these lives and part of these lives, we do these every week or twice weekly. And you can submit questions and we can go through them and talk more in depth as well. So we'll start with those. So that's on my Patreon account. That's just Anthony Chaffee MD if you guys are interested in checking that out. So to start things off, we'll ask one of the questions here from Carmine, who says, a few weeks in, and I know that I have increased my consumption of fat and it is filling, but I have to force myself to eat sometimes. My fear is that I'm not eating enough protein, especially since I have returned to the gym. Is this a common occurrence, and how do you cope with it? Yeah. So if you find yourself forcing yourself to eat, that means your body is telling you to stop. That means your body is telling you, hey, we've had enough. We don't need this anymore. Please stop. Um, Meat should taste good. You should be getting that positive feedback, that reward for eating meat and fat. And so if you're getting to the point where you're like, ugh, it's not really tasting good anymore, and you're forcing yourself, then that you're actually forcing yourself to overeat. Okay, so you don't need to do that, and you probably don't want to do that either, especially when you have excess body fat. Your body's not going to want as much as you think that it might. So you might think, wow, I'm really working out a lot, I'm doing all this, I need all this stuff, um, uh, I'm doing all this work and all that sort of stuff, I need more energy, I need more food. Well, you clearly don't if your body's telling you to stop eating. Okay, so you shouldn't force yourself to eat ever. Okay, so that would be what I would do, is just listen to your body, and if your body's telling you to eat less, eat less. So a question from Mike: after the body uses available dietary protein to build, repair the body on a plant-free carnivore diet, what becomes of the remaining protein? Does it become glycogen, glucose, fat excreted? If a combination, what are the approximate percentages? I don't know percentages. I do know your body can store and sequester protein, and so it's not just like this perfect level that here's all this protein and then it all gets shoveled away. So your body is able to conserve protein and store it away, and use it at later times. This is why we eat meat in one go, and then we use it throughout the day or throughout the next day or the night, and we rebuild our body and rebuild these structures. So your body is able to store protein just like it is able to store fat and carbohydrates as well. Um, some of it will turn into uh, glucose and glycogen, but that's generally um, need driven as opposed to substrate driven. So, namely, that you're just because you have a lot of extra protein, that doesn't necessarily mean that's just going to automatically turn into glucose and things like that. Some of it will, it seems, but it's more demand driven than anything. Um, So I guess there was a sort of an add-on to one of those hunger questions. If you've had issues with food before, how do you know if you're just misinterpreting hunger cues? That's a good question. It's difficult sometimes when people come from different ways of eating, or they're eating too much or too little for whatever reason, and having disordered eating patterns. Generally, people get less disordered eating on a carnivore diet, on a natural diet, because you're more satiated, you're more satisfied, you're not feeling bloated, you're not getting overweight, you feel good, and you're getting healthy. And it's also good for your mental health as well, significantly better for your mental health. And so you will have to relearn your hunger signals. You will have to relearn what it feels like to be hungry, and what that means. And so I think going by taste is really important. So if meat tastes good, I think that means you are hungry. If you are only eating meat, if you're not eating carbohydrates, if you're not taking different medications that can increase your appetite. Um, so if you're doing that, then if meat tastes good, I think that means you're hungry. And once it stops tasting good, it means you're not. And then you start paying attention to that and then relearning your hunger signals. Um, just a quick question here: does type 2 diabetes, can you eat on a carnivore diet? Yes, you absolutely can. It's very, very helpful. There are actual, big studies showing that just going on a ketogenic diet is very, very beneficial for type 2 diabetes. And type 1 diabetes really normalizes blood sugar, HbA1c, and makes it very, very controllable blood sugars, this is the important thing for diabetes. And you can come off a lot of your medications and reduce your insulin if you're insulin dependent. A lot of insulin dependent type 2 diabetics can come off of insulin. Not everyone, but a lot of people can. So yes, it's very, very beneficial, and it's very beneficial to everyone in every condition at every stage of life, because this really is our primary evolved, biologically appropriate, species specific diet that is the most optimal for the human beings, for the human animal. I truly believe that. And I truly believe that that's what the evidence shows. So another question from our Patreon members is Jeff. He says, I know someone who, after some misdiagnoses, now is diagnosed with hyperparathyroidism and hypercalcemia and is going to discuss surgery. Is this something that can be addressed first with diet? Maybe. I haven't really come across this before, but I think that in the context of a carnivore diet, and I have a strong suspicion that it will. I haven't seen it specifically, but your body's going to optimize. It's going to start working better when you're on a biologically appropriate, species specific, proper human diet, as Dr. Berry says. So your body's going to work better, and so your hyperparathyroidism and hypercalcemia, that is going to optimize as well. Is that going to fix it? I couldn't say, but are you going to work as well as you possibly can given your genetics and your situation? Yes. And so can that help things like that? It wouldn't be the first time something like that happened. So I wouldn't put it past it. I would certainly try it before I started getting surgery to rip my parathyroid glands out of my neck. And so I would definitely give that a shot. Does carnivore diet help with Hashimoto's disease? Yes, it seems that all autoimmune disorders seem to respond very, very well to a true elimination diet like carnivore, where you're eliminating out all of the unnecessary, unwanted, and unhealthy different foods that we eat that can precipitate different diseases like Hashimoto's. So we have a number of Hashimoto's patients at the functional medicine clinic I work at, and they have all been doing very, very well. It comes off a bit slower. Hashimoto's responds slower than, say, like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis or even rheumatoid arthritis, but it does respond and it does improve, and people's antibodies go down and their thyroid function goes up. And you can have permanent damage. You may have to take different medications ongoing, especially early on, or even permanently, but it can significantly improve things. And every single one of our patients is improving, and that's what I'm reading from other clinicians around the world that are doing this as well. So yes, Hashimoto's and all autoimmune diseases that I've seen respond very, very well to a carnivore elimination diet. Let's see. D Ford asks, are electrolytes necessary? Usually not. Usually you'll get everything that you need from just the meat that you're eating, because this is actually what we're designed to eat. And so you should get everything that you need. You shouldn't have to supplement if you're eating a biologically appropriate diet, right? Animals in the wild, they don't supplement, they just eat. So electrolytes, generally, no, you don't. Sometimes when you're transitioning from eating carbohydrates into any ketogenic diet, because of the drops in your insulin, sometimes your body has a bit more difficulty regulating your electrolytes. And so you might have a bit of a disturbance early on. Generally, that corrects on its own if it happens at all. Most people, it doesn't happen. Some people, it does, and maybe you just have to take some electrolytes for the first couple of weeks. Generally, you don't have to after that. But if you're having a problem and you have a deficiency, and you actually take a blood test, and you actually have, a low electrolytes on your blood tests, take some electrolytes. It's not that big of a deal. Most people will equate cramping with low electrolytes. That's not always the case. Quite often, that's dehydration, not getting enough water. And you can see this by the fact that a lot of people will just take copious amounts of electrolytes, and they'll still be getting all the cramps. They'll still be getting all the nighttime cramps. They'll still be getting the exact same experience with it. And so, well, obviously, it's not the electrolytes then, because they're taking electrolytes and nothing's changing, right? So then you tell those people, hey, drink a lot more water, and they go away. So that's quite often what happens. What to do with a knee with no ligament and arthritis in the hands? Well, there is damage that you can do to your body. I have damage that I've done to my body from years of sports and doing stupid things, and so those aren't necessarily those aren't going to heal themselves. You're not going to regrow ligaments necessarily. The body can do some amazing things, but it's that's a you know not something that I would hold out much hope for. Arthritis, you're not going to regrow your cartilage that we know of, but you will significantly, by going on a carnivore diet or even a ketogenic diet, you're going to significantly reduce the inflammation in your body. Ketones, just having higher ketones, significantly reduce inflammation in your body, and you're also eliminating out a lot of things that cause inflammation in your body. So you will experience the pain and discomfort and disability of arthritis far less. And so I think your life will improve a lot from that as well. Let's see. So, hi doc. Question: How does it work to be on a carnivore animal based and also play sports? Do we need a bit of carbs? I always feel a bit shaky with no carbs at all. No, you definitely don't need carbs. I think that it actually detracts from your performance, because when you eat carbohydrates, you raise your insulin. Insulin blocks proteolysis, it blocks lipolysis, it stops your body from being able to produce energy from fat. And so the only energy you have available is in your muscle and liver glycogen, and that will run out. That runs out in a couple hours. So if you're doing really high intensity work, you're going to hit the wall and you're going to crash. If you're fat adapted and you're on keto or carnivore, you make all the blood sugar, liver glycogen, muscle glycogen, and ketones that you need, instead of only running on the glycogen and glucose that you have in your system. And you're tapped into your fat stores. You're constantly replenishing all your glycogen and glucose and ketones. So you will not run out, right? Like, you have, even a very slender person has weeks of fat reserves left over, unless you're just completely emaciated and on the verge of starvation and death. You have weeks of energy left in you, and so no, exercise or sport or whatever is gonna crash you out, because you're constantly tapping into your fat stores. This is shown by Professor Tim Noakes, who is one of the top in the world's experts in exercise physiology and sports medicine. And he was one of the guys for 30 years who was saying, you need carbs to burn carbs. You've got to do these high performance athletes. Yeah, you have to have carbs. You have to have carbs. You have to have carbs. And he has, in the last decade or so, come out and said, like, oh my God, I've been lying to people for 30 years. I'm so sorry. No, you don't need carbs. In fact, you don't want carbs for the reasons I just mentioned. He's done randomized controlled trials where you have people athletes who are eating carbs, and ones that are keto adapted, fat adapted, and they have the exact same ability and output in their performance initially. And then going longer term, the keto adapted, fat adapted guys do way better, because they never crash, they never hit the wall, they just keep going. And then they switched it. So the people that were keto adapted, fat adapted, they had them eating carbs. And then they got the other guys fat adapted. And then they ran the tests again. They found the same results. The ones that were on carbs and the ones that were off carbs, they had the exact same exercise potential and output. until they hit the wall, and then the fat adapted guys took over. So that to me is sort of a end of the story. But really, for me, I just me as an athlete, I have never performed better and felt better and could go longer and go harder and get better results than when I was on a pure carnivore diet. When you eat carbohydrates, that shuts that down. You can think of it like, when people go on, running marathons or doing, Ironman and things like that. They talk about hitting the wall. You go and you go and you go, and you have to carbo load and fill all that because you don't want to hit the wall. You want to push the wall as far away as you can. But eventually you hit the wall and you feel like garbage. And most people stop and sit down, and that's where they call it a day. Then other people that are, more determined, they're pushing, they want to push themselves until they push through the wall. And they said that you can push yourself and you can break through the wall, and you can break through the wall, and then you get your second wind and your runner's high, and you just feel amazing, and you can just go forever and go forever. And the harder you go, the better you feel. Right. Well, what that is metabolically is you're eating a bunch of carbohydrates, your insulin's high, it stays high for about 24 hours. And then you will run out of your liver glycogen and muscle glycogen, and you'll run out of energy. Your blood sugar will drop, and you'll hit the wall, and you'll feel like garbage because you cannot replenish your blood sugar, and you cannot replenish your glycogen, and you cannot tap into your fat stores. Normally, this is going to take about 24 hours before that resolves. But if you push and you push and you push, you can actually force your metabolism back in to start immobilizing your fat store so you don't die. So that's what's happening. So I live in my second wind. I am always in my runner's high. When I start working out, I'm always burning fat, and I'm always feeling better. So the harder I push myself, the more energy I burn, the better I feel. And the harder I want to go, and the more energy I burn, the better I feel, the harder I want to go. So it's a positive feedback. I just want to go and go and go and go. And so, I don't run into the wall. I don't have to, crash and force my way through. I'm always feeling amazing. So for high performance athletes or any athletes or any sport, you have a monster advantage when you're keto adapted, fat adapted on carnivore, when you're eating what you're supposed to eat. Okay. I know several sports medicine doctors in Australia who work with some of the top rugby players in Australia and New Zealand. And I can tell you that some of the top players in rugby league and union are on carnivore, and they are not telling people because they don't want people to know about it, because this is their secret advantage, and they are taking full advantage of it while they can and revitalizing their careers and just crushing it. And some people have actually come out and spoken to the papers about it. And and there are a lot of others who are not talking about it because they don't want the secret to get out. And so yes, this is something that is really going to benefit you in sports and everything else. So the question here is like, what do you think about the whole fat debate? What fat percentage do you roughly recommend for men versus women? So for me, the fat debate isn't really a debate. It's just, you need to get enough fat and you need to get enough protein for your body, and your body's going to have different demands depending on if you're a man or a woman, depending on your goals, depending on your exercise level, and whether you're pregnant or not, and all these different sorts of things. So I think that you really can eat intuitively. I don't think you have to just, count your macros and pick what you're doing. I think that, if you need a calculator to figure out what to eat, that you're probably eating the wrong thing, and that you shouldn't have to do that. Gorillas and koalas and lions, they don't count calories, they don't count macros. They don't, pull out their calculator to figure out, how much, nutrients they're getting in. They just eat. They eat what they're supposed to eat, and they stop when they don't feel like eating anymore. So they're not forcing themselves to eat. And I think that's what we need to do as well. It does turn out that usually it's like 1-to-1. You need 1 gram of protein for every gram of fat. That turns out to be around 70% calories from fat, 30% calories from protein, roughly. That's going to change depending on the person, depending on their situation. So maybe aim for that and then adjust. I do a bunch of videos on how to figure that out. There's carnivore for beginners, tips, tricks, and pitfalls. and another one called fiber, constipation, and diet, and where I go and try to tell you how to figure out how to get enough fat. Basically, it comes down to your digestion. If you're only eating meat and water, then your body has a limited capacity for absorbing fat. Okay, you make bile. Bile emulsifies fat. That's how you absorb fat. You really can't absorb fat otherwise. You can absorb. You have some natural abilities of absorbing like some medium chain fatty acids, but a very small percentage of them. So when you're eating fat and you run out of bile, your liver only makes a certain amount of bile, usually about 800 milliliters to a liter, depending on the size of the person, a day. And so when that's gone, you really can't absorb fat. So what happens? That excess fat goes out of your body. You literally cannot absorb it, right? And so, I think there's this sort of this overflow valve. That's how I think about it, as overflow valve on fat, where it's really you really can't overeat fat. People say, "Oh, do you don't want to eat too much fat?" Well, what does that mean? Your body can only absorb a certain amount, and your body's very efficient. It's not going to make a bunch of bile if it doesn't want you to absorb fat with that. I think that our bodies are very, very efficient. They don't just make a whole bunch of products just for the hell of it, just to get a random amount of fat. Your body made that amount of bile because it wanted that amount of fat, and once you get that, your body's like, "Yep, we don't need any more," and so it just goes out, right? That excess fat is what keeps your stool soft. So if you have dry, hard stools, which is what constipation is, it's not infrequency of stools, it's the consistency of the stools. You can easily go on a carnivore diet only once or twice a week and very small volume, because there's just not much to go, because you're absorbing 98% of the meat that you're eating. That's a good thing. You're supposed to absorb the things that you're eating. You're not eating rocks here. We're not eating dirt and wood. You're eating things that you're supposed to absorb. Otherwise, why are you eating it? Um, so you want to absorb this stuff, and you're going to absorb every ounce of fat that you eat. If you're not getting enough fat, your stools are dry, that means you're absorbing every ounce of fat that you're eating, and you probably need more. You probably have more bile available for you. So you want to keep eating fat until you have normal stools, normal soft consistency stools. If you're eating a lot more fat than your body can absorb, then you can get loose stools. Okay, this is like where that saying is, like fat through a goose, where you give a goose a chunk of fat, just it's out through them in a minute or two, right? They can't absorb it, just shoots right out of them. That happens to you. The other side of it is, if you're really not getting enough fat, you can get so constipated that it causes a blockage, and only liquid stools can get around that, and you get what's called spurious diarrhea or overflow diarrhea. And so that alternates between these dry, hard, pebbly stools and like liquid stools. So that means you're so constipated, there's like liquid coming around. So yeah. So it says, "Hi, can I go for a marathon with just a half marathon 3 weeks before, or must I run a 32K first?" So I'm not a distance runner. I've never trained for those things before. I've just just played rugby and done a lot of just training for that and fitness training for that. So I don't know the best advice to give you there, but the best way to train for anything is to do it. So if you're running a marathon before you compete, I mean, like I'm playing, I would play in scrimmages. I do sprints and drills and all these sorts of things to get in preparation for the games, and playing practice games and practice matches and things like that in order to play the game. So if you want to get better at running marathons, run more marathons. That's my advice. Oh goodness. Oof. What's happening here? Sorry. Okay. All right. Oh, let's see what the next question is. Thoughts on autophagy and related research by David Sinclair. So I don't know all of his stuff. And I don't know exactly what you're referring to with David Sinclair, but David Sinclair is a professor at Harvard. He's done a lot of research into anti-aging and actually reversing the aging process, which is really interesting. And and I'm really excited to see where he goes with that, and what he ends up figuring out, because I want in, and and autophagy. So, autophagy or autophagy, which I think is probably more proper way of pronouncing it, is is when your body's clearing out these sort of, older, rundown cells, or even the parts therein. So the different organelles that are just sort of run down and worn out, like different macrophages, or sorry, mitochondria, and different sorts of organelles and things like that. So you're sort of recycling these things, and you're rebuilding new ones that work better and are tuned up. And that's really good. That's really important. And we find that you don't really do that when you're eating carbs. Okay, you're eating carbohydrates, you're eating sugar, your body just shuts down those processes, and you can't really uh, recycle these dead and dying cells and organelles. So when you fast, we know that you get a lot of this turnover, the cell turnover, and these organelle turnovers, autophagy, and but you also get mitophagy, so the mitochondria doing this, and all the different organelles. Uh, you know, are going to be recycled, and they're going to work better, and they're going to be more efficient, and they're going to be, and you're going to be more healthy and more vibrant. So we also know that it's not just fasting; it's just being in the metabolism that you're supposed to be in anyway. I don't think that that's a fasting metabolism, even though that's what I was taught in biochemistry. I think that that is our that is our primary metabolic state. That is the metabolic state of basically all animals in the wild, including humans, because humans just eat meat in the wild, right? Can you heal fatty liver on carnivore? Yes, you can. Fatty liver is just caused by eating certain things, and so you stop eating those things, and fatty liver goes away. But so back to David Sinclair, you will, on a carnivore diet, on a ketogenic diet, or just fasting, you will go through autophagy, you will stimulate stem cells, you will do a lot better health wise. And so, people are just literally aging backwards. And, we know as geneticists for 20 years now that human beings are designed to live 120 years, right? So why are we dying in our 60s and 70s, right? I mean, that's literally middle age. So why aren't we getting there? You know, that's because we're eating poison, and slow poison is still poison. You die 40 years early, you've been poisoned. All right. Um, so, I think a major thing that David Sinclair should look at is things like that. I mean, I don't think he's from listening to some of the things that he said on diet. He said that, yeah, from what I know, from the things I've heard, maybe he's changed his mind since then. But from the things that he said, it was just like, well, I haven't really looked into diet and all that sort of stuff. But this the all the studies say that, like, a Mediterranean diet is the best. Okay, so that's where he's going on. He hasn't really looked into this, and looking at nutritional studies and epidemiological studies, not great evidence. So you need to look at better evidence. You need to look at paleontological record. You need to look at comparative anatomy. You need to look at our physiology, and a lot of other things as well. And you can look at these carnivorous relatives of ours, like the Inuit, the Maasai, Hadza, the Nanette, many more examples, and they are very healthy. They don't get the diseases of the Western Australian Aboriginals, obviously. All these people did not get all these Western diseases, now called human diseases, because now animals are getting them. They're like, oh, we only see these in humans. They're human diseases. And what are you doing? Why are zoo animals getting human diseases? Because you're feeding them human food. You're feeding them things that they don't eat in the wild. You're feeding dogs and cats things they don't eat, they shouldn't eat normally, and they're getting human diseases. We're eating things that we don't eat in the wild. We're eating things that we didn't evolve on. We are getting these human diseases as well, because, as I've said before, I don't think that these so-called chronic diseases are diseases per se. I think that they are toxicities and malnutrition, toxic buildup of species inappropriate diet, and a lack of species specific nutrition. So, namely, too many plants that we are not evolved or adapted to eat and safely and break down and detoxify their poisons and extract nutrients from, and not enough meat, which is what our vital necessary nutrition source is. So those are my thoughts. I think if you combine the work of David Sinclair with a carnivore diet, you're going to be doing a lot better than anyone else has in a very long time, since like Methuselah. Do you drink raw milk? And thoughts. I don't drink raw milk. I generally don't drink milk at all. If I were to have dairy, I would aim to have raw dairy, but I just tend not to eat dairy. I just eat meat and drink water generally. sometimes have, some cheese with meat or whatever. I very, very rarely will have milk. Raw milk's not really available in Australia. It's a crime apparently, and so um, that's a bit rich. But it's um, it's better than homogenized pasteurized milk, but I don't think that it's really ideal, you know, and you will still have enough lactose in it that you'll get an insulin response and you'll disrupt your metabolism and metabolic state. And so I tend to avoid it for those reasons. Next question here. Do I have a salt routine? Is it something you track? I don't track it. I just salt to taste. I've just noticed my tastes are just changing where I'm using less and less salt as I go. I stopped using salt altogether for a couple weeks, or maybe I think I made it about a week, just to see how it was. Um, Things tasted, sort of bland, but still okay. A lot of people will say that when they give up salt, for a couple weeks, it tastes pretty bland, but then things actually start normalizing in your taste. I didn't have any downsides at all. I wasn't getting cramps. I wasn't having low energy. I didn't feel bad at all. So it looked fine, or it felt fine. And then I just sort of lightly salted things because I sort of like to use the salt to sort of dry out the meat a bit when I put them on the racks in the fridge. That just sort of helps it, sort of preserve longer and age a bit better. Does carnivore help with underactive thyroid? Yes, it does. I generally see patients, underactive thyroid and Hashimoto's is very underdiagnosed. It's something that people don't always look into, and and uh, and think about as being something that can affect them and affect their health. But it is definitely something that uh, it shows up a lot more than people realize. And so we see a lot of this in our functional medicine practice, because people are coming to us because they're just basically, they're just sort of fed up and they just feel sort of not their best. And they've heard that, we can make them feel better and optimize their health. And they come in and we check a battery of things. And one of those things is we thoroughly check the thyroid. And a lot of people have underactive thyroids. And we put those people on even other just diet and lifestyle changes, getting people to exercise more, intermittent fasting, eating whole foods and not a bunch of processed garbage or carbs. They will all improve their thyroid. Carnivore absolutely does that as well. It really helps thyroid as well. So yeah, I think that that's something that, and there's different causes of thyroid dysfunction, any sort of problems, but for the ones that are caused by disruption of eating the wrong things, then 100% carnivore can help that. Would carnivore diet help silence my tinnitus? It can. It depends on what's causing your tinnitus, but it's there are different sorts of inflammatory processes that can cause tinnitus, and you will reduce significantly the amount of inflammation that you have. And so I would, I would definitely say that can be helpful. Carnivore Down Under, thank you very much for the super chat. We appreciate you. Thank you for all your hard work. Well, thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. And that's very nice of you to say that and be my number one fan. I appreciate that. And thank you, Holly, as well, for the super chat. It's very kind of you as well. And Luke, thank you very much for the super chat too. Luke asks, any suggestions for reheating leftover steak? I don't tend to reheat it. I generally just eat it cold. I don't put it in the fridge. If I have a steak that's sort of left over, as long as there's no flies or whatever, you can cover it to make sure the bugs don't get in. That it just tastes fine the next day. I've left brisket on the counter for days and just sort of cut off a big slab of it every day. And it's great. It's fine. And, but if you're going to reheat it, I guess you could use the microwave, and I've done that, but sometimes it's just nice to just sort of get some tallow in a pan and just sort of toast it up and crisp it up in the tallow. And that's really good. Cade, thank you very much for the super chat, Cade. Um, do you think beef, water, salt allows one to cut body fat while putting on muscle? I have 80 pounds to cut and I'm getting stronger in the gym while losing body fat. I'm a 23-year-old male, very active. Your thoughts on this? Yes, I absolutely think that this will you literally shred fat and stack on muscle. I have absolutely no doubt about that. I see this all the time. I saw this in myself and other people. And especially if you're working out a lot, you are going to be putting on muscle and you are going to be shredding fat. And so your weight, may actually not change. Like I didn't my weight, I dropped 23 pounds in 10 days. When I just stopped eating vegetables. I wasn't even eating carbs. I was just eating vegetables and not that much meat. And then I started eating a lot more meat and I stopped eating all the greens and I dropped 23 pounds in 10 days. Right. And it seems insane, but that's exactly what happened. And when you do eat enough, when you're starving yourself and you're really limiting calories too much, your body just really just shuts down your metabolism, and you will actually store fat, and your body does not want to give up the fat stores that you have. So when you give yourself as much as your body is asking for, well, then you're going to trigger this release, and your body's going to actually ramp up your metabolism, and you're going to start getting back into business, and you're going to start burning more fat. Paradoxically, we know this in bariatric medicine. Bariatric surgeons will tell their patients, hey, your stomach's not big anymore, you can't eat too much, but you need to get at least 1,200 calories a day. Because if you don't eat at least 1,200 calories a day, you are not going to lose weight. You're going to stall your weight loss. And so this is a well-known phenomenon. So I lost 23 pounds in the first day, quintupling my caloric intake and just not eating greens. And then after that, my weight stabilized, and my weight didn't change. It didn't go up or down for months after that. But my body was transforming in front of me, so I was stacking on muscle and shredding fat. So that's exactly what will happen. So well done, Cade, for giving it a shot. And no risk, no reward. You took the risk, now you're getting the reward. So well done. Let's see where the next one here is. So Jay, thank you very much for the super chat. Jay, appreciate it very much. Jay asks or says, I'm a little confused about the interview with Dr. Mason. My cholesterol increased from 150s to 430 after 3 months on carnivore, LDL up to 320s. But triglycerides stayed at 70 and HDL went from 61 to 66. Better triglyceride HDL ratio. Should I be worried? No, you're fine. So you need to tell me a bit more about what you're eating. Like, are you eating strictly meat? Are you doing high fat meat? Um, are you fasting? Are you taking your bloods in a consistent way? I always tell people you want to take your bloods in the morning, always fasted between 9 and 11 a.m. with the same hydration status, right? So at least 2 glasses of water, no more than 4 glasses of water. If you're checking your uh, hormones and your cholesterol, you should not do any strenuous activity the day before or engage in any sexual activity, because this can throw that off. If you're fasting for a long period of time, your LDL will shoot up. So we know that you don't eat anything and your LDL goes up, right? And so it's very temperamental, and I wouldn't worry about LDL as long as your triglycerides are good and your HDL is good. Your LDL is good, and you have very good levels. Your HDL is very good, and your triglycerides are excellent. You have and your HDL is going up. You're eating saturated fat. Saturated fat increases your HDL. It's good for you. The Journal of the American College of Cardiology published a large meta-analysis in 2020 going through all the data and looking at it and showing that there was no correlation, not even an association between eating saturated fat and getting heart disease. In fact, they found an inverse correlation between eating saturated fat and getting a stroke. So people who ate more saturated fat were less likely to have a stroke, and vice versa, right? So, this is completely opposite of what we've been told our whole life, and this is a mainstream view now. This is a mainstream understanding. So you're doing just fine. I just keep doing what you're doing. Keep eating fatty meat and drinking water, and don't eat plants. Scroll down here. Sorry, guys. Douglas, thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Very kind of you. Um, Oscar, thank you as well for the super chat and the question. Oscar asks, "Hey Anthony, started carnivore a few weeks ago, but I have troubles with constant belching, hiccups after food and water. Tips, just adjustment period." That's a bit interesting. If you're eating anything else or drinking anything else or having any sort of flavoring um, in your water, anything like that, I would get rid of it. Try not drinking water around meal times. Okay. And, sort of generally thought, for at least like an hour, usually two before and after meals, just don't drink any water. And that keeps your digestive enzymes much more concentrated and you can digest things better. Um, also if you're just sort of swallowing air and things like that, you can sort of belch. Hiccups, it's more of a neurological issue, and there's a lot of reasons for hiccups. But I think this is probably just pass on its own. There's nothing in meat or water that's going to really cause all that and trigger all that. So I would just see how you go, and then try not to drink water around meal times, and see how you go. Can a carnivore diet reverse gallbladder sludge and the pain that comes with it? I think that it can. I mean, we don't have studies looking at this, but I've actually been talking to some generals. Well, trying for 4 years with some of my general surgery colleagues to like get a study like really showing that you can reverse gallbladder disease and sludge and even bile stones, or at least prevent them by going on a high fat anything diet, because if you're just eating enough fat, then you're going to stimulate your gallbladder to secrete bile, right? So this is where gallstones come from. This is where bile sludge comes from, because your bile sits in your gallbladder, but it doesn't just sit there and then overflow. It concentrates and concentrates and concentrates, and even in the textbook, it's described as concentrating up to 20 times more than 20 times more than normal, right? So I'm sure there's some people that concentrate even more than that. But what happens that to any hyper concentrated solution at rest? It forms precipitates, it forms crystals. That's what bile sludge is. That's what gallstones are. And so even if you have a predisposition to form gallstones and bile sludge, if you eat enough fat, and by enough fat I mean as much fat as your body has made bile for, then it's physically impossible to make bile sludge or gallstones, because there will be no bile in your gallbladder, right? So even if you were going to form stones in one day, which is not compatible with life, these babies would just be dying in the womb. Um, you still can't if you're eating enough fat, because there will be no bile in your gallbladder, right? So this is this is something that people should understand. This is the physiology of your body and your biology. So if you have bile sludge in your gallbladder and you're eating fat, this is going to excrete it. It's going to come out and squish it away. And so I do think that you can do that. Yes. Okay. Goodness. The Graham, thank you very much for the super chat. Thank you. Stan, thank you as well. I really appreciate it. Stan asks, "Hi doctor, I'm strict carnivore, mainly fatty beef. Should I worry about eating pork and chicken as well regularly, as their fat is different from different being grain fed?" Yeah, it is going to be different. It's not as ideal as like grass fed and finished beef fat, or venison fat, moose fat. Moose is delicious, by the way. Anyone who's not eaten moose, like, you should give that a shot. It's the best tasting meat I've ever had in my life was Norwegian moose. And so I think you're doing great. If you're going to eat pork and chicken, to see how you feel. If you have autoimmune issues and inflammatory processes, probably best to avoid it. There's no real point. A lot of people with autoimmune issues have a worse time with uh, pork, especially chicken, fish, and even eggs, like egg whites, especially, and dairy. Dairy in general can be quite inflammatory, the different proteins in casein that they can be a bit more inflammatory. There's like A1 and A2 proteins. A2 is less inflammatory, but it's still somewhat inflammatory. So those are just some things to think about. If you're feeling good on beef, just go for beef. If you want to try some pork and chicken, do, but just pay attention to your body and how you feel. I feel better on beef. I feel the best on beef. I always have. And so that's what I mainly eat. But sometimes I'll have pork, like some, crispy pork belly. Those are delicious. And some I went to a restaurant. I got like a whole duck. It was amazing, and some crispy pork, fantastic. I feel fine. I don't have any autoimmune issues or any sort of problems like that. But I do feel better on beef. But just see how you go. Just eat whatever meat that you enjoy and tastes good to you and that you can afford. So that's the main thing. Okay, Lorene, thank you very much for the super chat as well. It's very kind of you. Um, was loving your 30-day challenge group. Thank you for all you do. Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm really glad that you're enjoying that. That's for those of you who don't know this. That's a challenge that my partner and I, my business partner Simon Lewis, have put together to just sort of give people added support. Sort of like my Patreon, where I just sort of have these sort of communities set up where we can help people and give them added support. We can actually talk to them. I do try to talk to people on social media and answer questions on the comments and direct messages. I try to, but I do get quite a lot of these things, and they can get quite lost. And at the moment, I'm sort of a bit behind on all that. I'm a bit overwhelmed with it, but I do try. But with our carnivore challenge, we're in a dedicated Telegram group, and so they're able to ask questions directly, and so that's not a problem. And then we have weekly Zoom Q&A and check-ins, and make sure everyone's on the right track and getting helped out with that. And so, yeah, well, thank you very much. And I'm glad that you're finding it helpful. And hopefully it keeps being helpful and you do great. Oscar, thank you very much for the super chat as well. Oscar says, thank you. Also, I've had itchy red dots since starting, sometimes itchy without any dots. Histamine intolerance or keto rash, does it go away? It really depends on what's causing the dots. So that's something you need to sort of be aware of in your environment. There's a lot of things that can cause, contact dermatitis or other sorts of exposures that can precipitate a dot. You should also keep a food diary and look at the different foods that you're eating, when you're eating them, when you're getting these red dots and these rashes. Or in these itchy episodes. I find when I get some like seasonings or spices in the food that I eat, it's going to be at a restaurant, that I get itchy. My face gets itchy, my nose gets stuffy. I sort of feeling like a bit, tighter in the chest, like I'm getting some asthma, and that's just sort of the defense chemicals doing their thing and defending the plant. So I would look at that and see exactly what you're eating. If you're just pure meat and water, then see what different meats and the different ways you're cooking them, see if that affect things differently. It may not. They may not have any connection. But if it is, and you're eating these certain things, and you're getting this reaction after those things, well, something in it, whether it's histamines or whether it's 100 other things, whatever it is, it's doing something that you don't want. So just avoid that thing. Or you could see that it has no relationship to what you're eating and when you're eating it. And then that means there's something else in your environment that's doing this. Okay. Stuntman on the Loose. Thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Thoughts on carnivore while dealing with ulcerative colitis? Oh, you're in for a good time. Been on carnivore for 2 months. Symptoms have drastically dropped, but still minor bleeding. Finally, no medication, but want full remission. I think that's fully attainable. That's on the ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, but more so ulcerative colitis are very, very responsive to a carnivore diet or any elimination diet, because you're really just getting rid of these things. There are studies, large randomized controlled trials with an elemental diet, which is eliminating out. It's like this. You've probably come across it. It's like this liquid powder stuff that just has the pure nutrients that you need and nothing else. And you go on this liquid diet, which just has fat and proteins and things like that. And you want to get the ones that don't have any carbohydrates in it. Generally, those are ones made for pediatric epileptics because they really can't. They really need to be in ketosis. You find that these have better efficacy than in treating flare-ups of UC and Crohn's than steroids. Okay, that's crazy, And so it's what does that mean? That means that there's something that you're eating that is causing your flare-ups, right? So you just eliminate all that stuff out, and the stuff goes away. So as I alluded to earlier, if you have an autoimmune issue like ulcerative colitis, you need to be as close to grass-fed and finished beef and lamb as possible, because there's going to be things, even in meat, even in pork, chicken, fish, dairy, especially, and eggs, especially egg whites, that are going to be a trigger for your autoimmune issues. So I would get down to as close to, well, you can certainly go down to grain finished beef and lamb and just water today, and that will almost certainly get rid of all of your problems. And if that's just not quite enough, then you're going to need to source some grass fed and finished lambs. You can buy a whole lamb and just eat that for a few months, and it'll go away. I've no doubt in my mind. I've seen people after 3 months on a full carnivore diet, really sticking to red meat, have negative biopsies at 3 months. I've literally never seen someone go longer than 3 months and not get a negative biopsy, by doing things, pure in that way with just red meat. So just that's what I would suggest, just red meat and water. Black tape green lime, good name. Thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Question is, I'm going through a massive carb and sugar addiction. Yeah, that's unfortunate. A lot of people are stuck in that same situation. What are your suggestions to get out of it? Every time I try, I fail. It's difficult. It's difficult, and every situation is unique. But like any addiction, you can break the addiction, and generally it takes about 2 weeks. A lot of these addictions, sugar addiction, gives a dopamine response to your addiction centers of your brain, just like cocaine, heroin, and meth. And so this is going to have some withdrawals, and you're going to, have cravings and things like that. And so that lasts about 2 weeks generally. Nicotine lasts about 2 weeks generally to get over that chemical addiction. So, so keep that in mind. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. You make it 2 weeks, you should be out of the actual addiction side of things. And then it's just, I remember that cookies tasted nice, and then you might sort of buckle if you are tempted. I think the best way of doing this has actually been shown in studies. Dr. Chris Palmer from Harvard is a psychiatrist there. He talks about a lot of studies using a ketogenic diet showing that people withdrawing from drugs and alcohol actually have a much easier time getting off of those drugs and withdrawing and abstaining when they're in ketosis. And in fact, for alcohol, you can get seizures. You can get very, very hurt by withdrawing. The people that were in ketosis actually needed less benzodiazepines to help them get through their withdrawal, which is interesting. There's something different happening chemically in your body. It's not just in your mind. And so I would try a carnivore diet. I would at least try a keto diet. And just when you feel those cravings, you eat fatty meat. And in fact, you try to head it off before that. So as Dr. Baker has said, someone said, how much meat do I eat on a carnivore diet? And he said, eat as much meat as you need to not get cravings for carbs and sugar. So that's what I would suggest. Eat a ton of fatty meat. And, when you're full and you're stuffed on good nutrition, your cravings are going to be much, much, much more reduced. And also, if you can, everyone's logistical situation is different, but just throw out everything non-carnivore in your house. Just empty your fridge. You can go on my Instagram and you can scroll down towards the bottom. I have a picture of my fridge. It's just meat. It's like a a butcher store. Um, and so I would just do that. Get rid of everything that's carb and sugar related, and and just fill up on fatty meat, and just that's it. And just remember, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. After 2 weeks, you're free. And just do the best you can, man. And if you mess up, just get back on it. Just keep going. You're not out of the club. No one hates you. You can just get up and go again, and you'll get further the next time. And you just keep going until you get through. You know, and you fall down, you just get right back up and keep going. That's what you do. So good luck with that. I'm sure that you'll get there. Dr. Chaffee, what meat to fat ratio would you suggest for a person with MS? Just the same meat to fat ratio that I would suggest for anybody else. Just as much meat and fat as you need. Aim for gram for gram, and then adjust from there, and just make sure you're getting enough meat and fat. The main thing with things like MS is not eating all the other things that are going to precipitate the MS. There's always these requests to join. I've never actually accepted anybody's request to join, and so I don't know. Um, so I don't know. Maybe I'll try one of those one day. Great. Um, Jahey Fed, thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Dr. Chaffee. You recently saw a podcast where you brought up a patient with Ehlers-Danlos. It is rarely discussed, so I appreciated it very much. I also have Ehlers-Danlos and am autistic, and the carnivore diet has been amazing. Well, that's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, that was something that was really, really I really liked seeing as well, was that people with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome can actually resolve their issues. I actually have a patient at the moment in my clinic who has Ehlers-Danlos, and he said that after a few months, his situation was extremely different. So he would daily wake up with a joint out of place, out of socket, shoulder out of socket, elbow, wrist, fingers all bent around just because of moving at night, and they just pop out. Ehlers-Danlos is a connective tissue disorder where you get hypermobile joints, and so you can get a lot of dislocations and damage and arthritis early on. And he said that after about 3 months on a carnivore diet, he had no dislocations. Or maybe it wasn't even 3 months, maybe it was only a month, but he stopped getting dislocations altogether. And now he doesn't have joint pain. He doesn't dislocate his joints when he's doing strenuous activities. And he has his family has ranches and farms and things like that. And so that's awesome. And we're seeing more and more that autism is extremely benefited by getting proper nutrition for your body and your brain, and getting off the carbs, because the carbs cause harm and they disrupt the natural energy signaling and functioning of your brain. Your brain is supposed to run on ketones. There are parts of your brain that run on glucose. Most of it runs on ketones, and it wants ketones preferentially. So I think that that's great that you found that. I'm really, really glad that it's been helpful for you. Hopefully, you can be in groups with other people with similar conditions and encourage them to get on the same track, and help themselves as well. Especially when people are younger with autism, your brain is still developing when you're younger, and you can actually reverse a lot of the developmental issues that you had. And so it's the earlier you catch it, the earlier you address it, the earlier you go on a high fat meat based, at least ketogenic diet, if not full carnivore diet, the better. Your brain will develop better, and your children's brains will develop better, whether or not they have autism. And it's obviously especially important if they have a condition like that. So I just encourage people to look into it. There's a lot of literature out on the subject. Dr. Chris Palmer writes about it in his book Brain Energy, which is fantastic. I encourage everyone to read that book. We're currently reading that in the book club in my Patreon group, and it's fantastic. So I think everyone should know about all that. Mystic Skills, thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. 7 week strict lion diet, so that's just beef and water. Off 6 medications, awesome. And I'm on day 6 of detoxing from 8 years of daily cannabis use and 3 years of opioids for severe IBS and interstitial cystitis. This way of eating saved me. Well, that's fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that. And and that's just goes into what I was just saying there with addiction. Again, in Dr. Chris Palmer's book, Professor Palmer's book, he's a professor of psychiatry at Harvard. Um, that he writes about that in his book. Um, that people are able to beat their addictions to very serious narcotics and drugs when they're on even just a ketogenic diet. It makes a big difference. So that's fantastic. I'm really happy for that. Happy to hear that. Really well done. Okay. Oh. I've been a beer drinker for 10 years, zero carb beer, clean now. Does the alcohol in beer act the same as fructose, or is it the carb accompanying the alcohol that is a problem? No, yeah, no, alcohol is what carbs are the problem. Alcohol is also a problem. And so alcohol obviously does a lot of bad things in your system and is broken down in your liver. It's detoxified in your liver, but the breakdown products it goes into are not ideal. Those breakdown products actually cause harm as well. They go into fatty droplets. That's where fatty liver comes into, and you sort of sequester this fat there. And a lot of these downstream products cause harm and cause liver damage and peripheral insulin resistance, and can precipitate atherosclerosis, heart disease, and other degenerative processes. So yeah, so and it has been shown by University of California, San Francisco biochemistry department that fructose and alcohol get broken down into the same substances, and so they all cause the same harm once they're broken down into those substances. Um, Question: New study out this week that says there are no benefits to intermittent fasting. What are your thoughts? Well, I haven't read the study, so I don't know about that. There are certainly a lot of studies that tout the benefits of intermittent fasting. I suppose it's how they design the study, how they put it together, and if it actually showed what they aimed to show with it. So if you send that study along or DM me on Instagram with the study, I'm happy to take a look at it and talk about it. The Graham, thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. He says, I believe the addictions are attempts to improve life, or I believe that all addictions are attempts to improve life. So anything healthy that improves life probably will help with bad addictions too. That's a very good way of looking at it. You're just trying to be happier and enjoy things more, and you're sad and you're upset, and so you turn to these sorts of things, and then your brain starts working better, your body starts feeling better, and you don't need those things anymore. And so I think that's a very plausible explanation for that. Yeah. Have you seen anyone get relief from inflammation caused by disc herniation? I'm 17 days into carnivore, losing weight, feeling great, but so far very little relief with inflammation. Yes, I have. It depends on what issues you're getting. Are you just getting back pain? Is that herniation hitting onto a nerve, causing impingement and radiculopathy down a specific dermatome? Either way, yes, it can help. I've seen it help a lot of people in that exact position. That is a condition that I'm very familiar with, and I've seen people do very, very well with that. There are neurosurgeons that I've spoken to around Australia and the world that are actually doing this and actually treating people with a ketogenic carnivore diet to improve their symptoms from discogenic back pain and radiculopathy. So yes, that is something that can help. So just be patient. Just eat meat, drink water. It's not going to fix everything. It's not going to cure everything, but it can certainly reduce the inflammation and the pain and symptoms experienced. It's not going to fix everyone every time, but it will help. So just keep it up. Tired looking for a name. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Thanks for a constant stream of valuable information. You're very welcome. I do hope this is helpful for people, and as long as people are interested and and want to know more, I'm happy to answer it. I think this is something that is very beneficial to everyone. I've sort of looked into this and studied this very, very in depth for the last 5 years, and it's built on really 25 years of serious study into biology and human biology and nutrition and botany and cancer biology. So all of these things add up, and so I'm happy to share what I've learned and what I've thought about and figured out. Um, do you want Hodels? Hodis? Anyway, sorry I butchered your name, but thank you very much for the super chat. 100% carnivore for a month. Colitis not flaring is bad. That's great. Gastroesophageal reflux disease has improved. Great. I'm thinking it takes time. It takes time to fully attenuate these problems with the diet. Lactose-free butter seems to help. Yes, absolutely. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, and your body wasn't damaged in a month. So you're going to need more than a month to heal. When you reverse a lot of diseases and you drop 80 pounds of weight in 6 months, I mean, you're doing really well. Like people talk about how you go out into the woods and you walk 10 miles into the woods. Well, you got to walk 10 miles back, and that's sort of how you can think about it with your health. You've spent 20 years mucking up your body and mucking up your health. Well, it's going to take time to come back. It's not going to take 20 years, but you've already made significant improvements in just a month. So I would be very happy with that, and that's just signs of good things to come. So just keep it up. Stefano, thank you very much for the super chat. Very generous of you. Appreciate it. I became aware of keto 10 years ago, adhered to it for 6 months at a time. And since I'm in and out, healthy, fasting, etc., I'm completely carb addicted. Developed diverticulosis, flare up recently, and keto carnivore completely cured this. Well, that's fantastic. And you know what? That's the funny thing, is that we talk about how important and beneficial fiber is, and don't eat meat and all these sorts of things. And what do surgeons tell you to do when you have diverticulitis? Don't eat fiber, right? Eat things that have a low residue that you're going to absorb, that have high bioavailability. You're just going to absorb. It's not going to create a lot of waste. That is meat. That is what meat is. Meat is the perfect example of that. And so there was a study with over 2,000 people doing colonoscopies and seeing people's risks for diverticulosis. And they found that the only things even correlated with increased risk of developing diverticulosis, which is just the outpouching, and then diverticulitis is the infections of those outpouches, that the only things associated with it were increased fiber intake and increased number of bowel motions a day, right? You're just wearing out the organ and it gets worn out. So constipation wasn't a risk factor. Meat wasn't a risk factor. Fat wasn't a risk factor. The only risk factors were fiber and number of bowel motions, and fiber and bowel motions go hand in hand, right? Because you cannot break it down. You cannot digest it. It has to go out. People talk about, it's like, oh, well, you can't digest meat. It just sits in your gut for 10 years. How? Okay. I've eaten hundreds of pounds of beef this year. Like there's nothing in here, right? And, that's because I'm absorbing 98% of it. You're right. It doesn't come out because it went in, it stayed into my body, into my bloodstream. And fiber, you actually can't break that down. It doesn't matter if it is there for 10 years or 20 years or 1,000 years. You don't have the enzymes to break down fiber, period. You can never break it down. So what happens if you can't use it, you can't break it down, you can't absorb it? It goes out the other end. That's what waste is. It doesn't just sit there. There's not just like a bag just sitting there. Oh, this meat's just sitting here. It's a one-way tube. I mean, I saw through that when I was 7. Say, oh, it's just sitting there. How can it possibly sit there for 10 years? Did you not go to the bathroom for 10 years? Probably not. So if we weren't digesting steak, if we weren't able to absorb it, it would go out just like fiber. But in fact, it's fiber that we can't absorb and break down. But we've just been told this, and then we're not thinking about it, right? They're, oh, you need to eat a bunch of plants because it's so much more easy. It's so much easier to digest. You can't digest it. Meat you can digest. That's the easiest thing in the world to digest. you can't digest plants. And yet we've been told that it's the other way around. And instead of thinking about it and thinking like, actually, that doesn't make any sense, people just bought into it and they get so invested in it. And they get so angry when you point this stuff out. But it's a fact. It's true. You can't break down fiber. It just goes out. You can absolutely break down meat and fat. It stays in. So Terry, thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. What is your opinion of stevia leaf extract and monk fruit once in a while? Same thing as my opinion of cigarettes and cocaine once in a while. If you want to do it, that's your choice, but it's nothing that I want to put in my body because it's not good for you. It's not something we evolved on. It's not something that is going to provide benefit to us. It can cause harm. It can cause addiction. It can hit your limbic system, make you remember that sweet taste and that sweet flavor, make you go, I want something sweet again. And then you sort of go down the whole, spiral of, ending up in a motel 2 weeks later covered in Krispy Kreme dust, So I don't know. That's just not something that I personally think that is worth it to me. I mean, you get something that tastes a bit nummy and causes harm. Well, that's the same relationship that we have with drugs. We know smoking is bad for you. We know cocaine is bad for you. We know drinking is bad for you. And yet people do it because they enjoy the experience of it at the time. And so, they enjoy this experience of it at the time. And they say, okay, well, I'm willing to accept the repercussions, the ramifications of that. So you can say that with stevia and monk fruit, and sure, that's not as bad as alcohol, tobacco, or cigarette or cocaine that I know of, but it's still not good for you. It's still not adding benefit to your health. And so where I'm coming from, I like optimal health. I like feeling my best all the time. And you know what? Meat doesn't need stevia. Like steak tastes good without it, and that's what I eat anyway. So that's my 2 cents on that. But do whatever makes you happy. And if you're going to have it every now and then, I would just make sure it stays every now and then, because it's very easy to get these things, these addictive substances, start every now and then and become all the time. And then other things get added in as well. And it's a slippery slope, because you start making concessions for one thing, you're going to make it for a dozen other things. And then you're back to eating the way you were before. And you're not going to be doing as well. Bad Monk, thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. They ask, hello, doctor, is chicken and eggs diet optimal? Beef or mostly red meat is not available here in India. Thank you very much. You've helped me tremendously. Well, I'm really glad to hear that. And that's totally fine. Just eat the meat that you have access to, that makes you feel good, and that you enjoy. And if you can get lamb's great. If you can get venison's great. But if you can't, chicken and eggs are perfectly fine. If you have autoimmune issues, that might be a bit more of a touchy subject. But if the chickens are eating natural, things, going around eating bugs and other chickens, then you're going to be they're going to be a lot better than sort of store-bought chicken and eggs. So that's totally fine. If you feel good on those, then just go for it. Teddy Honey Bunch, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Hi, Dr. Chaffee. I've been carnivore for about 5 months. When I have severe pain, I can't eat animal-based food. It happened a couple times. Do you know what causes this? I'm a cancer patient. Well, that's a good question. I think that's something that we would need to sort of explore a bit more. If you want to DM me on Instagram, I'll try and find it there. But the main thing is, where's your pain? What's causing the pain? Sometimes people can have cancer, and that, like if you have bowel cancer, say, you can, any sort of residue that goes in, it can sort of push on that and be uncomfortable. Usually it's actually fiber that causes a problem, because that's has bulkiness to it, and that's pushing on this cancer in the bowel, and that can cause pain. So I can't think of anything that would be in meat that would cause pain for cancer. I guess it depends on where the cancer is and what else is going on and what else you're eating. But one thing that can be very good for cancer is just fasting. If you look at my interview with Professor Thomas Seyfried, he's one of the world's experts in cancer biology and how it relates to nutrition, especially. And so he's shown that, if you reduce your glucose, increase your ketones, this starves out cancer cells because cancer cells are very reliant on glucose. And this is something that we've known for 100 years. With the work of Nobel Prize winner Otto Warburg, cancer cells need 400 times the amount of glucose that normal cells do. And cancer cells cannot run on ketones like normal cells can. And so you go into ketosis and you're fasting and your blood sugar's down and you're depriving these cancer cells of nutrients. Your body's doing fine because it runs on ketones. That can be fine. So if you find yourself not being able to eat animal-based, I still wouldn't eat things that are going to be harmful. So maybe take that period of time to just fast for a little bit. I don't think that you want to do that too much. You don't want to go losing weight and hurting yourself, but maybe strategically fast around those times. At the very least, I would not eat carbohydrates. If you had to eat something else besides meat or animal based, I would definitely not eat carbohydrates because that is fueling the fire of your cancer. So some things to think about anyway. Okay. There we go. Blessed Seven family, thank you very much for the super chat. Very much appreciate that. 51-year-old woman. Hold on a second. Yeah. So 51-year-old woman, stroke in 2017, now completely off blood pressure medications and cholesterol. I've been all carnivore since July. Great. So grateful. Thank you, Dr. Chaffee, for your genuine concern and helpful advice. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I'm really glad that it's been helpful. This is one of those things that I just sort of started doing because I was interested in it and I thought that it could help people. And I had no idea if it would, be interesting to anybody except me. And, but I'm really glad that people are picking it up and finding it interesting and using it to help their lives. That actually really makes me very, very happy. So I'm very glad to see that. Thank you for sharing that. Kim Kraft, thank you very much for the super chat. It's very kind of you. Good to see you. Kim Kraft again. Thank you again. And Charger Mopar, good to see you, buddy. Eating a steak in front of your phone. Let's see here. And Frage, I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce that right. If I did, it's by pure luck. Thank you very much for the super chat. They ask, why does the brain naturally prefer sugar if it's bad? So that's the thing, that's something that people say it naturally prefers, but it doesn't actually. It depends on how you look at it, or it depends on if you look at it. If you look at it, you'll see that even when your blood sugar is high, if your ketones come up to a certain level, it'll dump out the glucose and just run on ketones. So once you reach a threshold, your brain will exclusively run on ketones. Certain parts can only run on glucose. The majority of it, this applies to with the ketones. So it is claimed, I think erroneously, that the brain's primary resource and fuel is sugar because when we're in our primary metabolic state, when we're eating, we're in a fed state. Your brain is mostly running on glucose. It's still running on ketones. Your brain always runs on ketones. It has to run on ketones to a certain extent. That they're like, okay, well, this must be what it primarily runs on because this is your primary metabolic state. So that's its primary nutrient source. But again, I disagree with that. I don't think that's our primary metabolic source. I think that our so-called fasting metabolic state is our primary source. I think we call the fed state our primary state because by the time we were able to look at biochemistry at a molecular level, everyone was eating carbs, right? And so I said, oh, when you eat, it looks like this. And when you don't eat, it looks like that. And it's like, yeah, when you eat anything except carbohydrates, it also looks like that. And, when I eat 5,000 calories in ribeye, I am not fasting. That is not a fasting metabolism, right? So that is misnamed, right? So when you're in your primary metabolic state or just have higher ketones, your brain will click over and just run on ketones, and those certain areas of the brain will run on glucose. Also, it's not that blood sugar is bad or carbohydrates per se are bad. It's that exogenous carbohydrates, exogenous sugars, eating foods containing sugars, plant sugars, because there are carbohydrates in meat, of course, and glycogen and things like that. But plant sugars and plant carbohydrates, the reason that is bad, that is not what your body wants. That disrupts your body's normal um, biochemical processes. And so your blood sugar goes up artificially, and your body freaks out and goes, oh my goodness, this is going to kill you, because high blood sugar damages your body. These glucose molecules physically fuse to other molecules called glycations, non-enzymatic binding of those carbohydrate molecules to other molecules, and it damages them irreversibly in most cases. So um, that is harmful. And so our bodies look at that and go, sweet Jesus, what has this idiot done? And it slams up your insulin to try to get this stuff out of your system as quickly as possible. But that insulin disrupts a lot of your hormonal and biochemical processes. A lot of them, it can precipitate, blocking the conversion of testosterone into estrogen in the ovaries in women. So they get, too high testosterone, too low estrogen. They can develop PCOS. In everyone, it can actually precipitate high blood pressure as well. It can cause a lot of problems. And so it's just something to understand that it's not something you want to take in. We make all the blood sugar, glycogen, and ketones that we need. We don't need to bring in extra carbohydrates. We make carbohydrates. You do not need to bring them in. Brenda Shute, thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And it's Rexus is also very generous. Thank you very much for the super chat. That was very kind of you. Hi, Dr. Chaffee. Carnivore seems touted as a fat loss diet. However, I'm somebody who needs to gain weight who still struggles from inflammation. Is carnivore feasible for someone wanting to put on weight? Yeah, so I don't think of it as a fat loss diet. This is not a quick, crash diet to get you in your high school, prom dress again and then go back to eating cake and pies. This is the optimal diet for human beings, and so this is going to be optimal for every person in every situation at every stage in life. And so if you need to put on weight, if you need to gain health, lose weight, this is for you. If you just want to optimize yourself, if you even feel amazing, I've thought I felt amazing my whole life. I played very high level sports and worked very hard to be in very good shape and feel good. What I thought was good all the time. Then I got all this garbage out of my system, and I realized I felt 1,000 times better than I've ever felt in my entire life. And I realized looking back that I felt like garbage my whole life. And I was not okay with that. I was not happy with that. And I did not want that for other people as well. So if you want to put on weight, and by weight, I'm assuming you mean healthy weight, like lean muscle mass, then carnivore is absolutely the way to go. I've never been able to put on lean muscle mass faster and easier than on a carnivore diet. You're taking in all the building blocks. What are you doing? You're trying to put in lean muscle mass, right? You're trying to build meat. Okay, eat meat. That's exactly what you need to put on. Meat is more meat. So you need to lift weights, exercise, be physical, and eat a lot of meat. And don't force feed yourself. Your body knows what it's doing. Just give it what it's asking for. Keep eating meat with the fat on it until it stops tasting good. And that's pretty much it. Okay. And Barbara Shoot, again, thank you very much. That was very kind of you. And Black Tape Green Lime, thank you again for the super chat. They ask thoughts on Thor's on women. I'm assuming that's thoughts on women on keto carnivore. Women's hormones do play a huge part on cravings and energy levels. Do you think we should approach the diet differently? No, I don't think you have to approach it differently. There's no examples of females of any species that eat differently than the males, right? So you may eat less, but you still need to eat the same thing. And again, you need to get enough meat, enough fat, enough protein. And yes, it absolutely will optimize your hormones for men and for women. Like I mentioned, just getting rid of carbohydrates really helps with PCOS, which is the leading cause of infertility in women. And again, insulin blocks the conversion, because women first of all, you start with cholesterol. So you're not getting enough cholesterol, not get cholesterol in your diet. You're not going to make enough hormones because your hormones are made from cholesterol. We only make about 70% of the cholesterol that we need. You need the rest from your dietary intake. Okay, so you need this for your normal hormonal health. So you're not getting enough cholesterol, you're not getting enough fat, you're not going to be making the hormones that you need. There are many hormones between cholesterol and estrogen. The last one being testosterone. So women make testosterone first, and that gets converted into estrogen in the kidney and in the ovaries. Insulin blocks that. So insulin will block the conversion of testosterone into estrogen. So testosterone will be much too high, estrogen will be much too low, and you will get serious hormonal dysregulation. So that and many other reasons, there are different plants that are hormone disruptors. There's a lot of phytoestrogens, like in soy. There's I don't know 10 or 20 times the amount of phytoestrogens in 3 ounces of soy than a fertile woman will make in a day. There's 50 times more phytoestrogens in those 3 ounces of soy than in the birth control pill. So these are not what you want in your body if you're wanting to optimize your hormonal health. And there's other things that can block your estrogen and block your testosterone and derange things in other ways because the plant is trying to mess you up. The plant is saying, you eat me, it's going to cost you. All right. They do not want it to be advantageous for you to eat them because they die when you eat them. So, just like, animals can run away or fight back. They've got horns, they can kick, they can fight, they can bite. They have defenses. They have ways of stopping you from eating them because they don't want to be eaten either. No living thing wants to be eaten. Okay. So, you need to understand that. And different living things have different defenses. And the defenses of a stationary plant or fungus or algae is that they use these toxins and these biotoxins and defense chemicals to stop you from eating them and to get sick and to get poisoned if you do. And to sequester nutrients and make it hard for you to function properly and to get any nutrients from it. A lot of the nutrients are bound up in ways that we don't have the enzymes to break down because we're not designed to eat those plants. They have other things like phytic acid, oxalates, tannins that bind to different nutrients and make them completely unavailable. We cannot get rid of these sorts of things. Someone's asking about estrogen in raw milk. I don't know how much estrogen in raw milk, but it's nowhere near the amount that's in soy. And one of the things too that people talk about, like red meat. I actually had a patient that had breast cancer, and her oncologist said, don't eat red meat because it has all this estrogen in it. So what are you supposed to eat? A bunch of plants, basically, right? Eat some tofu. I'm like, Jesus, there's 3.9 nanograms of estrogen in a hormone treated cow in 3 ounces of lean hormone treated beef. Okay. There's over 1 million nanograms of phytoestrogen in 3 ounces of soy. Okay. Little different. The birth control pill, depending on the pill, has about 35,000 nanograms of estrogen. A fertile woman makes over 150,000 nanograms of estrogen. So so 3.9 nanograms in meat, like who cares? That means nothing. It means nothing, and yet we've been told that this is a big deal because all these hormones that are put into it. No, this is a drop in the bucket. It's not doing anything, and it's a con. It is just a con, and it's a marketing trick to sell their garbage and their slop. And just don't buy it. Meat is our natural diet. Meat is good for you. Meat is what we're evolved to eat. Meat is what we're supposed to eat. We are not supposed to eat plants. We are not designed and adapted to do that safely like a cow is. But cows are not designed and adapted to eat all plants. They eat very specific plants. They eat grass. And they don't even eat all grasses. They eat specific grasses. So, sheep and cows, you have them in the same pasture because they eat different grasses, right? So they can coexist. They're not competing for resources. Okay. So this is very, very important to understand this. And Esther Borosh, very good to see you. Thank you very much for joining. Says, Dear Dr. Chaffee, have you checked out the Deuteronomics course by Dr. Borosh? I haven't yet, but that is something I definitely plan on doing. Deuteronomics is the study of deuterium and biology in our body. Very interesting. For people that are interested in that, please check out the interview I did with Dr. Laszlo Borosh, who's a professor emeritus of pediatrics at the School of Medicine at UCLA, and is a biochemistry researcher there at UCLA for decades. And now he's teaching deuteronomics in Hungary, and so that's something. He has a course that you can check out online, and that's something I'm going to do. But do check that out. Check out that interview I had with him and Dr. Gabor Somalai, who's also one of the world's experts in deuterium. So very, very interesting stuff and how this affects your health. And when you're in ketosis, when you're in a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet, this actually improves that side of things as well. So another piece of the puzzle as well. Okay. All right, guys. Well, if we don't have any more burning questions, I think we might leave it there. It's been sort of an hour and a half, and Elle's passed out on the couch next to me, so I should probably get going. But thank you, everyone, for coming by. I hope that was helpful for people. And if you like that and you thought this was helpful, please share it with people and let them know where they can sort of find these things, and I'll somehow try to put up some tags on the questions and things like that, and or if someone is able to do that and put up the sort of the timestamps on all this, so I can put it up on YouTube so people can you can sort of see the questions and skip around to them. That would be very, very helpful. Thank you guys very, very much. I am going to try to do these more potentially every sort of week or two, and I do these every week with my Patreon group, and so you guys are more than welcome to come there, but you don't have to pay for anything that I do. That's just something that can provide a little more support, and so if that's something you want, then please come by. But otherwise, we'll see you here next time. Okay. All right, guys, thank you very much, and we'll see you later. And please do, hit the bell and like and subscribe. That really does help, grow the channel and get this out to more people. And the more people that are engaged, the more people that like and comment, the more it helps the algorithms. And, so if you're just say whatever, just comment whatever, just say anything, smiley face, fire symbol, like whatever the hell, it doesn't matter. It does help, and it picks things up in the algorithms, and it helps get things out to more people. So thank you very, very much, everyone. I really appreciate it, and looking forward to seeing you guys again. Yes, I do want to do the quiz. All right. Thanks, guys.